We have with us Chief Rabbi Lord Sachs and also Professor Ronald Heifetz. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them and then ask them to share with us their own leadership journey for a few minutes and then pose some questions. So many of you, of course, know Lord Jonathan Sachs. He's no stranger to the role of leadership, having been Chief Rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the Commonwealth for the last 20 years. Prior to taking up this post, he was principal of Jews College, as well as being a rabbi in both Golders Green and Mont Blanc, and also Ogre of the B'nai Akiva Youth Movement. Chief Rabbi, as we know, has written and spoken widely on the subject of leadership in business, politics, in Judaism, and a frequent contributor to radio, television, and the national press. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm also delighted to introduce Professor Ronald Heifetz. He's one of the world's most renowned experts on leadership theory and practice, and is currently, I hope I get this right, the King Hussein bin Talal Senior Lecturer in Public Leadership and founder of the Center for Public Leadership at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. He's recognized for his seminal work on both the practice and teaching of leadership, and his research focuses on building the adaptive capacity of societies and organizations. Professor Heifetz speaks and consults extensively throughout the world with heads of governments, companies, and NGOs. So, and thank you. So perhaps starting with you, Chief Rabbi, if you'd like to share with us for a few minutes some thoughts on your own leadership journey.
Oh, well, I'm just about to leave, so I don't know, actually. I think it began simply with a certain impatience. I love moving the furniture. I love upsetting people. I love jumping into ponds before I discover I can't swim. And therefore, I think I just found myself where it was beginning at university, thinking, you know, maybe we can liven things up a little bit. And I think that's been where I've been ever since. I just want to say, sorry, in parentheses, can I just personally say how moving it is for me to see Jennifer and Austin and Lisa and the Science family here. I hope you feel, as we all feel tonight, that this incredible organization has really taken everything that Adam was and stood for and made sure that his influence continues to inspire successive generations of people walking down the road he walked down and ensuring that his memory really is a blessing. So we thank you for everything you have done, and we thank everyone who's been part in helping Adam to continue being an inspiration to all of us. And secondly, what an immense privilege I feel it to be sitting next to this man, who is just a total leap. I mean, he's just an absolute giant in the field of leadership. The only honest writer on leadership I've ever come across. Everyone else on leadership writes books saying leadership is fun. Ron writes books saying leadership is hell, but do it anyway. And he is just, you must read his books, they're absolutely superb. I think I was driven by one particular passion which has stayed with me from my earliest days to today. And that is, if you look at the history of Judaism, you see it was a revolutionary force in the world. It produced one of the most learned and literate people there has ever been. What's his name? Johnson. What's his name? Paul Johnson. In his History of the Jews, called Rabbinic Judaism, an ancient and highly efficient social machine for the production of intellectuals. It was a revolutionary and fearless force. And the more I looked at Jewish life around me, and the more I read, the more I realized that somehow or other Jews and Judaism have not really faced the problems of the modern world in the last 2 centuries. We understand why. They were suffering from an onslaught of anti-Semitism of the most horrendous dimensions, culminating in the Holocaust. But somehow, Judaism was not engaging with the world. And that drove me from then to today, and I just felt, if somebody else isn't doing it, I better do so. I have to say that throughout my career, had it not been for mentors and people who took the trouble to spend time with me and encourage me, including the Rabbi, but other people along the way, I wouldn't have been where I am today. They believed in me more than I believed in myself. And we all have to find someone like that to help us along the way. And I just end with a memory. It's now actually 21 years, but a memory from the very beginning of my chief rabbinate, which I think might tell us how Anglo-Jewry has changed. It was the first time I was ever invited to speak to the Board of Deputies. And for some reason, feeling they had quite a young chief rabbi, they said to me, "Aren't you young for the job?" And I said, "Don't worry, in this job, I'll age rapidly." And for some reason, I remember this very clearly, just to make me feel I wasn't entirely alone, they had put behind me on the platform of the old Woburn House, you remember? They had a kind of stage, the graduating year of the first year of the Adam Science program. And I got up and I said to the Board of Deputies, "Everyone says Anglo-Jewry lacks young leaders." I said, "It's completely untrue. There is the evidence right behind me. What it lacks is people willing to make space for young leaders." There was the most icy silence. Except for one person, I never forget this. The late Lady Janet, Greville's late mother, who was about so high, but feisty beyond feisty. And she said to me at the end, as everyone was trying to avoid eye contact, "That's it, Chief Rabbi, you tell them." Well, I think Anglo-Jewry has now made space. Not perhaps enough, but at least more than there was. And that is a tribute to the Adam Science program.
Thank you. Thank you. And Professor Heifetz, a slightly different take on it. A teacher and a consultant in leadership.
I wouldn't say that I'm a practitioner of leadership. I would say that I'm a teacher. So I'll tell you how I ended up teaching in this area. I actually started off in music and medicine and had some extraordinary teachers in those fields. When I finished medical school, after my first year of training in surgery, I decided to take a year to go back to study music. At Juilliard, I played the cello, and I once trained with a man named Piatigorsky. So I had taken it somewhat seriously, and during that year, to support my music habit, I had to make a living. And being licensed already as a general practitioner, I could practice medicine, you know, in emergency rooms, what we call moonlighting jobs. I was 27 or 8 at the time. And the first moonlighting job I was able to get in New York City was at Rikers Island Prison, which is the main prison for New York City. When you fly into LaGuardia Airport, you fly over Rikers Island Prison, although most people don't know it. So in the prison, I would examine inmates all night long. They would come in by the busload from the local jails, and they were entitled to a medical exam. And that's what I do all night long, in addition to occasional medical emergencies. Well, the patterns of social pathology were so striking. Everybody coming into the prison in the middle of the night had been poor, and nearly everyone was black or Hispanic. There weren't any firstborn sons from Scarsdale or Greenwich, Connecticut or Great Neck coming into Rikers Island Prison in the night. And so I began to rethink what it meant to be a doctor, and I began to think about how to be a doctor at the systemic level, at sort of the in social policy or organizational level rather than one-on-one. And after months of nightmares, I let go of my residency contract to study, to train in neurosurgery, my father's area, and set myself adrift. And then I had another job, another moonlighting job, examining corporate executives in a fancy clinic in Manhattan. These people were also entitled to a medical exam, but not because they were being admitted to a prison, but as part of their fringe benefit package. And at 28 years old, I had the amazing opportunity to talk with these mainly guys, occasionally women, and to do a medical exam. But more than half of them weren't living very healthy, and they were stressed in various ways. And so instead of doing a quick exam, I would talk with them for an hour, hour and a half. And shocking to me at the time, they would talk. I was in the long white jacket, and they were in pajamas. And I had a long beard and was only 28, but I was safe, and I was the doc, and they would talk. And it turns out there were they didn't have too many opportunities to really talk. And so, in the course of a year of talking with these people for 5 or 6 hours a day, I got very interested in the challenges of leadership and organization. And then decided I would fashion for myself some training program, this was in 1978, to study and teach myself about the practice of leadership in organizations and in politics. And that led me then to finish a residency in psychiatry and then to do a degree at the Kennedy School and then persuade the school to hire me to experiment with developing a leadership curriculum back in 1983. So that's one strand. But the other strands are, I grew up in California, and every Friday afternoon, late in the afternoon before Shabbos, my mother would turn on a stack of records on the phonograph, and all of these Yiddish songs would play. Songs from where she was from. She was born in Germany in 1925 and left in January of 1938, just in time, with her immediate family, her brother and her parents. And they came to America. And every Friday, late afternoon, she would listen to these Yiddish songs, by Rabbi and Jan Pierce and all sorts of other people, Israeli songs. And it made me wonder, how could that happen? What is it in a society that could generate leadership, or at least charismatic authority, that could go so awry as it happened in my mother's youth? And that question, I think, became an anchoring question for me, and continues to be. Because if you were to read any of my books, what you'll read between the lines is the answer to the question, how do we generate an antidote to the dangers of charismatic authority? Charismatic authority, as the Rabbi can attest because he is one, can be an enormous blessing to a community, but it can also be an enormous danger to a community. And so, unraveling that puzzle, understanding the politics and the sociology that creates such events in human history, such human beings elevated to that kind of power, began to be the orienting theme of my work. I had other great teachers. I had the opportunity to know Abraham Heschel quite well in the last months of his life, not because I was anybody special. I had just finished my year studying cello, but I happened to date his daughter. And I was finishing my college degree at Columbia in 1972, 1973, and he died in December of 1972. So that was inspiring to me, and it taught me some wonderful things. I'll never forget sitting, having Shabbos dinner at their home, just Rabbi Heschel and his wife, Mrs. Heschel, Sylvia Heschel, and Susie and I. And I didn't know very much. I had lived in Israel for one summer and began to teach myself some Hebrew, but I didn't know very much at all. Barely could read Hebrew, but he asked me to do the prayer, as part of benching. And so I'm sitting there schwitzing, like stumbling through every word, trying to sound out each syllable. Totally, but I did know from, I did know that what mattered was doing it. So as I struggled and I saw, I looked corner of my eye, Susie turned to her mother, kind of embarrassed, but Rabbi Heschel telling them to just give me all the time I needed, because that was what mattered. the intention.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, that's what I try to teach people about leadership, how to be anchored in a kind of a moral standing that would keep them, that would immunize them from the temptations of acting like they know when they don't know.
Thank you.